All right. Hope you're all well. So I want to talk a bit about tax because I keep hearing this argument that if we tax the rich, or they'll just all leave. So that's like a kind of how they try to justify that rich people can get tax breaks and all sorts of things like, tax write-offs, what have you, tax returns, that kind of stuff. But it's like the people's like kind of excuse as to why they think that's okay is that, well, if we don't, then it's going to really basically be bad for the economy because they're going to take all this wealth with them and they're not putting it into our economy. But it turns out that these fears might actually be overblown, and some people may leave, but it would probably still be a net positive to the economy by increasing the tax revenue or something. But it just seems to be like a kind of bit of a excuse to kind of like justify having fucking billionaires in the country and whatever, because we really shouldn't be having that when there's so much wealth inequality going on, when there's people that are, on the breadline, as they call it. So the justification is, we can't really just, tax the rich more because they're just all going to leave. But is that really true? It just seems like a bunch of fear-mongering by, the people that, it all comes from like the corporate elites and stuff, I believe. A lot of this propaganda, that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe they're all just going to go. But it's probably not going to happen. At least not to the level that they're making it out to be, like there's going to be this mass exodus of rich people. I just don't think that's going to happen, is it? I mean, it's like, they could just go to Dubai, you could say, but is that really practical for a lot of them? A lot of them are, they might have businesses over here. It isn't always so easy to just move to a different country. Now, I actually suggested that if it did come to it, where they did all start to try and leave, that they would have to be kind of like, what could happen is that they have to pay a certain amount of tax into the system, so that way they are still contributing or something like that. So depending on like how much money their businesses make, they would have to like basically give a certain percentage, I guess. Could be how it goes. So like whatever the earnings for that year, they have to give a percentage to the UK or whatever. So that could be one way to deal with it, I guess. Now you could say, well, it's not easy to implement, but I do think it could be possible if they actually gave a damn about people. But there's also, you could say, well, it's more just that they need to get rid of taxes for the like working class people and try to cut down on unnecessary spending. And I think there is something to that, but you could say a lot of taxpayers' money is just getting wasted. A lot of it's just being thrown, down the drain, basically, isn't it? So like, if they actually maybe redistributed some of that money into the people who actually need it, that would be great. But I don't know. But it's just a lot of it's just being wasted. Probably like thousands every year of taxpayers' money, per person. We're talking, actually being wasted. So it's not small amounts of money. This is a lot of money. There's billions being wasted, I think, in taxpayers' money every single year in total. which comes out to thousands of pounds worth of money. So we have to kind of like, look at this and think, hang on a minute, something ain't right here. We need to do something about this. Because this system is designed to keep people rich and keep people poor. So, I don't know what you guys think, but I thought I'd talk a bit about this, because it just sounds like a bunch of fear-mongering. I saw like some video, it was Telegraph. I mean, they do, maybe put out some good things, but they seem to be compromised by like conservative kind of like right-wing sort of economics, like the whole kind of like Reaganomics type of thing, because I think I've talked about this before, but Reaganomics I don't think actually works in practice, and they'll still going on about the trickle-down effect and all that. It just ends up basically more wealth being concentrated in the elites and less wealth down at the bottom. So I don't really think that this whole Reaganomics thing actually benefits the average person. At least not in any kind of meaningful way, I don't think. And some might argue that it even causes inequalities and actually makes the small businesses actually throttled, because a lot of big businesses that are thriving end up actually out-competing the smaller businesses. Well, a lot of them have, financial backing to begin with to like out-compete them. So it's not a level playing field, basically. Someone could just start up a small business but then fail within months, and sometimes it's their own fault, but the thing is that oftentimes, they just, they're being out-competed. It's hard for them to compete with these big companies that are able to mass produce, they're able to just make so much profit and then reinvest that profit to then even further their monopolies and stuff. So as these big companies get bigger and bigger, they become more monopolized. Look at, for example, Meta, or Facebook, whatever. Then you've got Google as well. Even look at how powerful these companies get as they start to acquire more and more different companies. It starts to become compromised. It starts to become more about data collection, or it's just about targeting certain kinds of ads at people, or whatever it might be, but it ends up becoming compromised, whereas a smaller company that's just trying to start up, and it's hard because there's this whole kind of monopoly on these sorts of things. Like, there's only a few that really do that well, and then the rest are just kind of irrelevant, basically. I suppose in some ways, like you could say with like music nowadays, it has improved in some ways, that a lot of more smaller artists are getting some recognition, and there's less of that kind of monoculture. And some argued that there were some good things about that, but then I think it's good that like more independent artists can be appreciated, even if it's just a niche community. Whereas back in the day, it was actually harder to actually get recognised. You'd have to do a lot of legwork in order to even just get some local, kind of like success or whatever. But like a small musician could like use different ways to like, even if they can't necessarily get a massive audience, they could leverage different ways of making money. For example, selling different things online, and it's just it just makes it a lot easier in a lot of ways. So anyway, I don't know whether to just get off here, and I don't know, there's nothing going on by the looks of it, unless there's somebody chatting and I can't see it. Maybe I'll just refresh this thing a sec. Chatting, I thought maybe it was just, but yeah, it's just dead in here. I thought maybe we'd have a few more people, but apparently not. You know, I need to kind of chat about this stuff, and no one seems interested. I might just, maybe I could try going over TikTok for a minute, but doesn't seem like anyone's really coming in here. So, okay then, goodbye.